The landscapes of our lives are for learning, where experience is our teacher. When we gather together to share our resources, we are destined to love and thrive. Good morning, Pierre.
Hey, good morning, Maureen. Beautiful blue sky background behind you this morning. Rainy day in California. Just another one. I adore it. I came down through the rain and just loved it. But what are we talking about this morning?
Well, I shared a quick little Eckhart Tolle video with you. It's about 11 minutes long, called Excess Baggage. And I shared it with my sisters and a bunch of other people because I thought it was like a really good nutshell of like how much the way we think about things causes unnecessary extra suffering, right? Like there's going to be pain and challenge in life, and things are not going to go the way we would want them to, and all of that. But then on top of that, it's he's saying life is your response to those things. And if we're not aware of how we're responding to our challenges, we're really not going to find out really what life's all about. Like that it is the response. It's not just your circumstance or the event or people. So I thought it wrapped it up in a nice little 10-minute clip.
Yeah, no, I loved getting it and listening to it. And the fact that it was Eckhart Tolle, somebody that we have not mentioned much, or if we even have, and a great resource. The thing with a couple of things, it was wonderful for me to hear his voice. I imagined when I was reading him that he was a young man, and I had him in my mind as this youngster, like a 30-year-old. Maybe he was when I was reading him way back, but to hear him as an older, I think German or Austrian.
Yeah.
With the kind of a little bit gravelly voice, certainly older voice, was interesting. Yeah.
I remember watching him on a longer video. I forget, maybe it was an interview. I think it was an interview actually with Dave Rubin on the Rubin Report, believe it or not. He was on, it was really good. And I'm sure I probably shared that with you, but his life story was really interesting. I don't know if anybody ever wants to go on the rabbit hole of like kind of his background. Maybe we can put that link to that podcast, that interview in the show notes.
I'd actually like to do a follow-up pod on this guy and post them together, because the thing, I was talking about, like how I envisioned him, because his life was so unusual. Where he ended up and how he got there, just it stuck with me, and it was kind of like, and so I'd like to bring that forward. And you were talking about it's called, the second arrow in sort of Buddhist tradition, the thing
the Buddhist metaphor, the little analogy that is analogous to what he's talking about life happens, and then how our interpretations and narratives and stories we tell about what happens is that second arrow. It can add insult to injury, in other words, right?
Exactly. And as Maureen mentioned, it's only an 11-minute thing. Our podcast may be longer than what his message is, but you were focusing on the second arrow. But I found the first part of his interview, I guess, so fascinating, because he was talking about life is suffering. We've heard that before, and suffering is how we awake. And then the piece that was really sweet is that it's not just us. Every sentient being suffers. Even the blade of grass suffers. It struggles to emerge. And this concept that living organisms all go through this. And he used a long analogy related to birds' alertness, and how this brings an awakening in us, but in humans, we've got a mind, and well, to use your vernacular, it fucks stuff up.
Yeah, I think that, but it's important to distinguish between the blade of grass struggling and the bird being alert to the precariousness of the environment. Like, life is precarious. That I think that's the first arrow, that life has pain in it, and like you can die, and it's about survival. And he makes the reference to us, the bird evolving. If the bird wasn't alert and it wasn't aware and awake and alert to its environment, it's gonna die, right? Eventually. And
Right.
all those birds who weren't alert died. So that's, I think, just the challenge of being alive. That's just a challenge of life. I think that's the first arrow.
Right.
It's the response to it. It's the response to the challenges that
Right.
is where we can suffer. I think that's what the Buddhists mean by the
Well,
suffering piece. Because life
that's
isn't
right.
all
Well,
suffering, but the
yeah.
challenges give us an opportunity, as he was saying. Like, it's an opportunity to grow into higher consciousness and awakening, and that's really what life's about.
Right. Right. Well, the suffering, I think there's a context in which we look at suffering, which is according to Tolle, incorrect. Oh, why am I suffering? Why is this happening to me? Life is difficult. And that becomes a context. And with that context, then we get the mind basically in control. The mind starts to say, well, I need to make this different. And all these I statements,
Well, and
right?
it takes it
When you
personally.
lose that, you can then sort of flow in consciousness with the universe that you live in, a big part of which is suffering. But when you start off or come to this view that this is not right, this shouldn't be happening to me,
And that's taking things personally. That's what he meant. And I think some people, like, at
right,
first I heard him say that at the beginning. He's like, yeah,
right,
people take life personally. It's like, what the hell does that mean? It's what you were saying, like, my ego, like, this is about me, this is happening to me. Why should I have these challenges? And it's like, you're no different than
the
the rest
blade of
of
grass,
nature. This is the way it is. Like, don't take it so personally.
right?
And and as humans, we do that. We take it personally, and we encounter, he was saying that that original narrative and story is when that we encounter obstacles, and that's a bad thing. And that shouldn't be happening. That's the narrative, that we're thinking that. And it's like, you know, that's what he called a delusion. He
It's
said
a
there's an
delusion. It's a
underlying
delusion.
assumption in our minds that is delusional.
It's
Like,
delusional.
right.
It's delusional. I used to have this metaphor, everybody's front door looks great, because people thought that it was a happy family behind that front door, right? But no, I mean, like Tolstoy
Well, that's
said,
the assumption, right? Like,
that's the
that's the
assumption,
assumption you're
right? It's
making.
delusional. It's
Yeah.
delusional. And you see it on television enough times, Leave It to Beaver and other things, and you think, oh well, everybody's happy. No, that's not the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying to you about CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And all that is an examination of those assumptions. It's looking at the way, it's understanding how you're thinking, or what Tolle would say, a dysfunctional use of your mind, causes problems like cognitive distortions. Maybe you're reasoning from emotion, maybe you're catastrophizing, and you're thinking what's happening is way big of a deal than it really is. And so it's like, check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Check your thinking. Like, let's look at the way you're thinking about
Did
things.
you just say, check yourself
Yeah,
before you wreck
yeah,
yourself? Have you
yeah.
been like in
I
AA
always say that.
meetings or something
No,
like
I
that?
don't know where that comes. I don't know. That just, it's really, but because you're thinking can wreck. you,
I don't know. That's a brilliant.
right? I mean,
If that's a Maureenism, we gotta repeat that like every
that's
podcast.
a
That was
common
just
phrase.
great.
Yeah.
I thought it
But
was like on one of those tent cards at a, not that I'm just kidding. I've been in, the 12-step thing, but for family issues. And so I don't want to make any, I don't want to make I don't want to make
I
any
think those phrases
that
from
Maureen,
the 12-step
anything.
programs are amazing, like going like God, like,
Yeah, you're right,
side
right.
of the street. I
One
think
day
they're
at a
all great.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're classic wisdom, but I like that he called that, I'll quote it again, a greater part of unhappiness arises through a dysfunctional use of your mind, not so much the circumstances of your life. And I know that people spend a lot of attention and time focused on the circumstance and pointing the finger at the circumstance or the person or the event and trying to control that
Yeah.
instead of looking on the inside, right? The workout
Yeah.
with it, like, okay, but what do I own here? What's my side of the street that
Yeah.
I need to look at, the way I'm reacting to this, thinking about this, responding to it.
Yeah.
We
The
don't
the
do
the the
that.
words in there that really struck me eh, were dysfunctional use of your mind. And I burst out laughing when I heard them, excuse me. And that is so true. And as a person sitting in meditation, you actually get to witness the dysfunctional use of your mind
Yeah.
instead of live it. It's quite the show.
Yeah. Well, we talked about narratives before on another podcast, and Desi's referring to the narratives that we that kind of are instilled in us early in life. Number one, like, where do those narratives come from? A lot of them come from the way we are shaped from a young age before we have a choice, and we just kind of inherit or get shaped by these stories of the way things are, the way who we think we are, what we think about other people, the world, whatever. And then, grow up kind of with these assumptions and beliefs, really. And,
Mhm.
and then they get played out in all our experiences as we become adults and, maybe become aware of them. But I
Well,
think pain and challenge is actually the opportunity or excuse to then force you, like when you suffer or something's terrible or hard or challenging, you're and you keep kind of running up against it over and over again.
sure.
Those are signs, those are opportunities to say, okay, I need to examine the way I'm thinking about this, and you know maybe things will change, maybe I won't suffer as much. And he gave an simple example of going to the airport and realizing that your flight is canceled, and he's so funny, he's so humorous, and he look up at the board and, yeah, flight's still canceled. And he gave an exercise, to people.
Right.
Okay, if you can, okay, you get to the airport, your flight's canceled. Now, automatic for most of us is, this is terrible, reactive, this is bad. Oh my God, why me? Blah, blah, blah. All the,
Right.
whatever your narratives are,
Right. Right.
automatically come up, right? And
Right.
they're automatic thoughts. And so he was saying, picture yourself at the airport. Now try to separate you see the board, it still says canceled, but without the story. Like, just you're in the moment, and he says you connect to your senses. You can
Right.
feel yourself breathing. Okay, you know what you're looking at around you. You hear sounds,
Right.
whatever. And your sense perceptions kind of come alive in that moment before the narrative, like, there's
Right.
no narrative, it's just
Right.
what's happening in the moment.
Right.
And
Right.
we've talked about that before. It's like, like hold in the moment, pause
Mhm.
before the interpretation and giving meaning to that experience. It's like, the flight
Sure.
is canceled, that's what's happening.
Right.
Everything you think and say and interpret about that and what it means, can either make you worse or better, or right. So it's trying to separate from that. I thought it was a great example.
Great. It's a great story. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great example of how you can be two different or multiple different ways in that circumstance. You can go into the whole, as you said, narrative story, or you can experience it for what it is. And
Yeah.
um,
This
yeah,
is
it's good.
profound. This is not a small thing though. Like, this is why I shared this video, because okay, fine. We just learned about like separating the event from your response to the event. Fine. That's important, right? It's
Right.
important to know that your mind can make you suffer. That's important. But like you just said, like, oh, it's, you can like easily do this. Some people won't understand. It's really challenging. I've found that many people struggle with even just that idea of stepping back from your thoughts, that there's a part of you and there's an experience in your experience that isn't necessarily thinking, and to separate. And so many people, when you're trying to do cognitive behavior therapy with people, it's really hard to wrap your mind around that, because we do think we are our thoughts so much. And if you think habitually all through life, you're
That's
just acting that way, right? Like,
that's John Kabat-Zinn. The statement
right.
is, we are not our thoughts. Whoa, head exploding emoji.
What the hell
Revelation
does
to
that
most
mean?
people.
Right.
I think, being a bit of a meditator, um, and realizing that we're not our thoughts. And as I said before, watching this great little TV show of your mind's thoughts from a somewhat removed meditative um, seat of consciousness. I guess I'll use that word. Um, it what's challenging for me is, okay, I'm doing this and it brings tremendous benefits over a period of time. Well,
Like what?
how come oh gosh.
Like not reacting at the airport, like not going into immediate
There's
fear?
that. I spoke with a friend, Bill, and he's a meditator. He's been meditating for a long time, and his description, he's an older gentleman. His description was, well, my wife likes me better. Um, it just makes him a different person. He's not going to
But in what
actually
way? Like, let's get
explain it.
specific. What are the specific benefits? Oh, you're
I
calmer,
think
or you're less reactive, or
I think there's a less reactive piece, although what I was thinking about in terms of benefits is when I'm sitting, and this is funny because well, it's funny to me. You're supposed to sort of clear your mind of thoughts, you let them come and go and all that sort of thing. But it creates space. When I'm observing my thoughts, I start to realize that they're thoughts and they're just thoughts, and then I just kind of go to my senses and try and experience the body part
whatever you're experiencing
and
in that
sense.
moment.
Yeah, and when the thoughts come, there's a meditation thing where you let them flow through, they don't last, you recognize their fleetingness, and you remove yourself from the control they have over you. And when that happens, when I meditate, and this is the funny part, another thought will come in, and it could be from a very different place. And sometimes those thoughts are profound, and sometimes they're very productive for my day. So it's kind of interesting. I get off the treadmill of this mind generating sense making or nonsense making of the world and just observe, and then it leaves a little space in my head, which is going all the time. And I'll get a very nice thought, like maybe I should do something for my daughter, or maybe I should It's not always I should. It's just there's some space there. And then relative to what you were saying about people not being able to get this, I struggle with, okay, not struggle, but I think the challenge is, okay, I do this in meditation and just a little bit, it's not the whole meditative experience. Well, how come I'm not doing it when I'm walking around? Why do why do I not behave like this? And I think that's what the enlightened beings are able to do.
Well,
They
yeah, mindfulness, just being mindful all the time, like not all the time, but
right,
just throughout the day, like a moving meditation, like just
right,
becomes part of a way of being. And
right.
I think
It's
noticing
like that polite
thoughts
cancel.
come up all the time throughout your day. Like you can notice that thoughts are thought, I'll be washing the
Right,
dishes. They're like, oh, have the like epiphany or a moment there of like, oh, I was just lost in thought, and
yeah,
wasn't in the moment, but that it's the noticing, right? That happened. And
yeah. Eckhart
I
Tolle,
mean,
like,
the trial and error of it is the thing. I was gonna say, I think a lot of people struggle to understand the that we are in our thoughts, and then just to separate, like his example at the airport. Like I think that's hard for people to do. One reason why it's hard for people to do is, first of all, they're trying to understand it through thinking about it. Second
mhm,
is it's hard for people to hold, to slow down enough and be, physiologically unstressed, not too stressed enough to be able to attend to this exercise and practice it. But the whole point is you learn it, you understand it and learn it through the practice, through the trial and error of just trying to do those exercises. Like he said,
right,
like go to the airport, okay, something with your next challenge, whatever that is that comes up, try to separate or at least notice that you're telling a narrative about it. I think it's helpful to learn this in a therapeutic relationship because the therapist can help you identify those assumptions, identify those beliefs and the narratives. It's sort of like, oh, did you know you were telling that story
sure,
about that? You reflect
sure,
back so that it's
sure.
a giving the person a second chance to see, you know what I mean? And like, and you
No, for
decide,
sure.
like, is that how you want to feel about that? Like, let's talk about the possible ways you could respond to your flight being canceled. Okay. Like you just told the story that it was the worst thing in the world and you're furious. And then your stress goes through the roof. Is that how you want to respond to something like that? Can we take perspective and step back and say, like, is it the worst thing in the world? Is it a catastrophe? Or then do we just respond to what happened? Like there's lots of ways to think about things and there's lots of ways to respond. And I think that a lot of times people don't know they have that choice.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they need to be taught to build capacity to be able to be, manage their stress and then learn
They
about
do.
looking at their thoughts as thoughts, right? So it's
Yeah.
multi-step process that can be learned. And I think that's like, I like this video because that's kind of the main thing that I'm doing a lot of with everyone, like
Yeah.
whatever their
Learning.
problems are, whatever their level of dysregulation is, like, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. This is pretty mainstay kind
Yeah.
of thing to do.
Well, let's come back to Eckhart Tolle and talk about him as a person and his and how he got to, writing the book The Power of Now and
Yeah.
this view of blades of grass and airports and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah. Who are you?
Maureen, Landscapes for Learning. Live, learn to live and live to learn.
And I'm Pierre. Peace through grace, my friends. We'll come back to you with a little bit more Eckhart Tolle, a really good guy on the scene. Peace through grace.